Hey everyone, it's Fat Bub here. Not Fat Bub, sorry. It's been a bit. This is Mitch, your logical libertarian here. And we're going to discuss something we haven't discussed in a while. I haven't discussed really anything on this channel in a long time. So, it's going to be a bit rusty. However, what I do want to discuss is what's going on right now in the state of media, which is pretty sad. Just sharing the link right now. Alright. But the current state of the media is pretty sad. We just had recently this released, and if we look over here, we'll see we've got this released. The executive summary, this report, the alternative influence report, the broadcasting the reactionary right on YouTube, which this is not a report, even though it's in the frame of one. It's pretty much just it's a hit piece on YouTube. It's a political opinion piece. It has no actual verifiable, like there's no it's not an actual report based off of facts, based off of evidence, statistics, data. It's all conjecture. And this really brought me to realize how terrible our state of broadcasting and reporting, media, news is. And you know, they was always throwing around the whole fake news. It's fake news thing, and that became old because that became obvious, especially with Trump, that the whole fake news thing was more of just like, well, they just disagree with me. However, this is worse. This is not just, you know, calling your opposition fake news. This is making fake news to then sabotage your opposition. It is making shit up to do that. But when you look at it, the links, I'll link this in the description here. Hold on one second. Let's do this. Let's do this for you guys. Let's link this into the description here. Where's the description? So we'll do this. Alternative influence report. There you go. You guys can see that, but you can see so the way it's listed out, it says the summary, the contents, introduction, all the different things, as you would see with any sort of, you know, actual report, any entry you would see into like a scientific or you know, any sort of journal. It's mirroring that. It's mirroring legitimate resources you would use for research, you would use for reporting findings. It's mirroring essentially the scientific method, and it's disgusting to me because I care about those sort of things. I care about being able to find legitimate sources. I care about being able to conduct empirical research and to present that in a way where you have something that everyone can agree on, because it's like, okay, this is empirical evidence. You can reproduce the same result by the same searches that I can. You can reproduce the same result by conducting the same experiments that I did, and there's no flaw in the experiments. It's something that anyone can do. It doesn't require anything. Now it's just literally trying to make up things or tweaking things or stating that, well, this opinion is what I see and that opinion is what I see. But they have ideological testimonies, self-branding, search engine, and strategic convert. What is this? What is this? What is this? Promoting ideology through influencer marketing. What the fuck? Alternative credibility. And that's funny. Reliability, authenticity, and accountability. This is funny. Let's go to this. Let's go to page 15. And let's go over what's going on. First off, you gotta love this network here. This fucking network of all these different people. Like, oh, look at all these people who are connected. Dave Rubin is connected to Sargon, who's connected to fucking Millennial Woes. No. Millennial Woes is not at all connected. Ben Shapiro to Roaming Millennial to fucking Richard Spencer. No, and the funny thing is, I know so many people who fit into this web, who are really good YouTubers, who actually do similar things, who have been on other things with other people on here. And there are so many people who are not listed here. And it's like, you've got a mix of conservatives like Candace Owens, who's a joke, Steven Crowder, who's a joke, Stefan Molyneux, who's kind of a joke, mixed in with, you know, people who actually bring up legitimate ideas or actually provide commentary from normal people, from everyday people that everyone can relate to, providing a perspective that should be heard more, like some black guy, Blair White, Joe Rogan. Well, Joe Rogan's a celebrity, but still, you know, I mean, Chris Reagan's on here, Sargon. You've got so many people, and I'm surprised they didn't list a lot of people they could have. They stayed somewhat conservative here, and there are a lot of people I could see on this list that are not, that should be. Two of which, actually, there's a lot of people I'm surprised. Yeah, because fucking Paul Joseph Watson, really? Paul Joseph Watson falls under the same categories like Milo Yiannopoulos, Alex Jones, you know, the conservatives. But there's a difference between that and people like Crouten T or Andy Worski or any of the other people listed on here that are just regular YouTubers who are counteracting not just the far left progressives, which is, this is what this whole list is. There are people who have attacked far left progressivism, that pseudo socialist, pseudo communist idea that's extremely anti-egalitarian. Even though they say that they're for egalitarianism, they're extremely anti-egalitarian. They promote fascist totalitarianism. They say they're anarchical, but they would rather have the government. They're okay with the government enacting their ideas. They just promote anarchism because anarchism allows them to do what they want without repercussion from government. We can get into that another day. Well, there's so many people who aren't on here, like you know, smaller YouTubers like Dater Lucum, or Dater shouldn't be considered conservative, or hell, people like where's Undoomed on here, you know? Where's The Amazing Atheist? You know, TJ Kirk, he technically would fall under this. Same with fucking AIU, you know? Devin Tracy's shat on I don't know how many people on the far left, but he also is not a conservative. Same with TJ Kirk. I mean, even, you know, like Dusty Smith has done it. It's like, there's so many people. Where's fucking Skeptic and Shu? Like, where are the people that also are a part of this, but I think they consider them okay because they're not the difference, and I think this is the big thing. All of these people have hosted someone else on here that is considered bad. That's the big thing. Jordan Peterson's been on the Joe Rogan podcast. Richard Spencer's been on the Joe Rogan podcast. Dave Rubin's interviewed Candace Owens. Ben Shapiro has been on. I don't think he's been on Sargon, but Ben Shapiro has been on Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin and Joe Rogan have both interviewed Sargon. You know, Stefan Molyneux has debated half the people on here. A lot of these people have had conversations with these people, which is interesting because I would think the Bible Reloaded would be on here too, because I don't know, half the people on here are atheists who have been on the Bible Reloaded. All the non-super political, the more, you know, everyday people, you know. But it's because a lot of these people are either in line with centrist liberalism, libertarianism, liberal libertarianism like me, moderate conservatism, or then of course you have the fucking far-right nut jobs like Richard Spencer and all those fucktards. You know, you have this sort of thing that they're building this weird web that really doesn't need to exist. And I do like how they have at the bottom here, just to shit on Computing Forever, which is bullshit. He does a lot of stuff. He actually is what I would prefer Computing Forever over Stefan Molyneux, but even again, that's just an opinion piece. I do like how this is just so, it's so bullshit. But let's go to what we wanted, page 15. Here is where it starts. Building an alternative media. Across the alternative influence media, influence network, influencers express a distrust of the mainstream news media, which is true. And there's a reason behind it. We'll be getting over that in a bit. And a desire to use YouTube to create a better alternative media system, which has been going on for the past 10 years. Once YouTube really became a good fostering center for places like InfoWorks, The Young Turks, Vice News, even people who I think are a joke, but who would be more radio personalities like Steven Crowder or, you know, gosh, I can't believe I'm blanking on some of the people here. I'm trying to think of gosh, I feel embarrassed. But people who are more on the left, who have radio things. I can't believe I'm missing. I'm blanking on this. But you have all these people who have, you know, content. They provide alternative content online, who are everyday people who have everyday jobs, but have different opinions, and they provide their take on it. And those people they do things like Hangouts. They do things like you know, the Google Hangouts, or they do live streams like this where you can comment and do things. They do all sorts of more interactive content and what seems more grassroots. Steve Shives, that's who I was thinking of. Why couldn't I fucking think of Steve Shives? But Steve Shives is a great example. You have a lot of people who have been able to build based on reporting on ideas or commenting on news and getting people a different perspective that maybe is a bit more relatable. Well, I may not relate to Steve Shives and his ideas. We're both similar in the fact that we're individual, independent YouTubers. Granted, he has a lot more influence than I do. But individual, independent new YouTubers who are providing their own perspective based on their own experience and trying to relate to an audience that is similar to them, being the little guy. You know, that's what it is. That's where we relate. Same with Steven Crowder. Steven Crowder is a bit more bigger. He's kind of like Mark Dice. But again, he's radio. He's like a radio personality. You would hear him on a local radio rather than being big. And he obviously has influence from people like Alex Jones, Rush Limbaugh, you know, those who made it bigger in radio and TV broadcasted news, kind of like Glenn Beck. But you still got that's something smaller and more familiar. It's not the mega giants. And these people found a niche. And when it started to become discovered that CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, which we knew Fox News was nuts, all these places started becoming, they started lifting the veil and showing behind the curtain more, and letting slip the ulterior motives, the intentions, letting slip the fact that it wasn't unbiased reporting, but it was actually reporting with an agenda to try to create a narrative, not to just give us the facts and let us decide, but instead to present the facts in a package that leads us to a certain conclusion, that leads us to a certain idea, that leads us to believe or agree or relate to a certain thing. When it became manipulative, essentially propaganda, that's when people started to focus more on YouTube. And that's why it became a big niche. And this is just what happened. It's what they created. And of course, the thing is the focus is that they're going to be, you know, all these people are angry at that. Well, there's plenty of influence that is far left, plenty of influence that is considered SJW, and there are even people who are kind of social justice that still that combat certain stupidity and hey, come on, you know, don't, but are still pretty left wing and still agree with many ideas. There are people that will, you know, shit on Antifa, but will also still support someone like Bernie Sanders. And those people I don't think you should decry either. Even though they're not being listed in here, they are a big part of that network and would be just as influential, or influential, because a lot of them are in the same circles as a lot of the other non-white supremacist, non-alt-right people you list above, like Sargon and Chris Ray Gunn and so many other people listed on there. They've been on the Joe Rogan podcast. You know, they've talked to Roman Millennial. They're friends with that you know, that one black guy. There's some black guy. They're friends with so many people on there, or they interconnected with so many people on there that it's rather annoying to see them be shit on, but not catch them, even though they're technically a part of the same circle. And it does kind of bring them down, because those people are going to come to the aid of the rational people in here, the people being thrown under the bus unnecessarily, and say, like, you know, if you say they're bad, why don't you say I'm bad? What's going on here? And it's obvious this is an attack on non-traditional media just in general. But going back here, as you can see right in this area, it says the influencers of the alternative influence network distrust of the mainstream media, often turns outright rejection and hostility. Well, kind of. I mean, it turns into outright rejection, because if you distrust media, and the whole point of media is to be trusted to present you with facts, then you're going to be rejected. It's kind of like if you hand me a glass of water and I think you put something in it, I'm gonna reject the water. It's basic logic, simple reasoning. You can't figure that out. This is why you don't understand. And hostility, well, what do you mean by hostility? Hostility seems to not mean anything. I mean, hostility, we can define Antifa as hostile. We can define the doxing and character assassinations by modern feminists and a lot of progressivist activists. We can consider that hostility, but that's usually not considered hostility. That's considered, you know, righteous action by these people. But, you know, presenting any sort of rigid counter, any sort of firm dissension or counter or rebuttal is usually considered hostile now. If I firmly say, no, you're wrong, listen to me, this is why your ideas are stupid, that's considered hostile. But doxing me or slinging my name through the mud, that's not hostile by their standards. It's not about what's being done, it's about who's doing it. But it will continue. Various influencers decry what they feel is a liberal, progressive, or SJW bias. And they use those three words for a reason, because those three words are used differently. SJW is used by all of them, social justice warrior. But liberal and progressive are not. The far right, the alt-righters and the white nationalists and the really super right-wingers like Steven Crowder, who are not in the same boat. They're in a different boat. The white nationalists and then the more mid-road conservatives are not in the same boat, but they both will use the word liberal. Say the liberal media, they use liberal as a pejorative, because it's just what it is. I grew up in a conservative home. I know that's what's going on. In fact, I listen to all these liberals, you know. Progressive is used more by people who are closer to the left or even among the left, and want to differentiate between a liberal, which they usually identify as themselves, and a progressive, which is the social justice crowd. You know, people who would engage in social justice tactics, or who have a opinion or advocate in a way that would get them labeled as a social justice warrior, as a part of social justice activism. And there's a big difference there. You know, Ben Shapiro would call the Amazing Atheist a social justice warrior, or even myself, because I support trans rights, I support homosexual rights, you know, the rights to marry and be treated just like everyone else. I am pro-choice, I am an atheist, so I'm against religious influence in government, and I'm a constitutionalist. Not the fucking stupid term that a lot of people use. Oh, I'm a constitutionalist, and yeah, the conservative version of a constitutionalist, which isn't a constitutionalist. They're actually a religious fucking fascist who are like, well, I believe in the Constitution except for the First Amendment, because, you know, I believe that you need to believe in your God to be in government. But that's a different story. But I'm a constitutionalist. I very much have studied the Constitution. I understand its meaning, what its purpose is, each amendment and its value, and also kind of the historical context of each amendment and why some amendments added later don't really work, and other amendments added later are perfect and honestly could have been added earlier. A lot of things like that, but I consider myself a constitutionalist. It's a bit of a true Scotsman fallacy there, but when I say constitutionalist, I don't use it in the same way that it's colloquially used. But a lot of times people identify themselves separately from these two groups. Ben Shapiro would not see myself, or even maybe Milo Yiannopoulos would call me a social justice warrior because of my positions on certain things, because I disagree with them, and my disagreement is of an egalitarian position. And a lot of times egalitarianism is automatically criticized as social justice. However, from the progressive side, they recognize egalitarianism, actual egalitarianism, where you believe in equality under the law, equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome or equality of representation necessarily, not equality of disbursement, but equality of potential. They are deemed as being either pro patriarchy, rape culture, racism, white supremacy, whatever, or compliant and accepting of the quote-unquote status quo. Because we don't want to change the laws to force a situation that may be more superficially desirable, but in the end is built on a foundation that's going to crumble and create more issues than solve. Because we want to hold on to those stronger, better foundations where crap can be built upon, but crap can be swept from the foundation, and you can build something better from it. Because we don't believe in that, we're labeled alt-right too. So that's part of the reason too that all these people are, because a lot of them are not really in favor of throwing away being a liberal, throwing away being an egalitarian, to buy into this progressive idea that's going to actually shit on liberalism and egalitarianism and just be kind of a left-wing version of the alt-right. But as we continue, others point to cases of journalistic failure and economic challenges faced by media and digital environments. Some employ anti-establishment reasoning, which is interesting, anti-establishment. So they're not supposed to be the establishment, but then neither are supposed to be the progressives. They're supposed to be anti-establishment. So which one's establishment? Because if you're going to create a dichotomy like that, you can't have a dichotomy and then say that both are anti-establishment. You can't have an anti-establishment A and anti-establishment B and say, well, those are the two sides. Because then neither side is establishment. You cannot be anti-establishment if you don't have an establishment. Logically, you fucked yourself right there. Good job. Anyway, by creating an alternative media system on YouTube, which again, TYT, they're an alternative media system. Again, people like Steve Shives, people like Christy Winters, the whole group there, all of those people, Riley Dennis, they are all alternative media systems as well. So are they bad? They bring up, they do talk about some of the other videos. They'll react to videos by the people you're listing or people who are close to the people you're listing. So are they bad? But it states that these influencers in the AIN express a wish not only to provide an additional alternative option for young audiences. No, it's not for young audiences, it's for all audiences. In fact, a lot of young people don't really agree with these positions. There are a lot that do, obviously myself and many other millennials, but especially when you get into Gen Z, and there's just a lot of people, even a lot of millennials, who agree with the progressive position. When it comes to the politosphere, people who are active in politics, millennials are majority progressive. They're majority far, quote-unquote, left. I hate using the term left and right. But that's where they lie. So, not really. Their audience is for everyone. For anyone who's willing to listen. Oh, but the goal is to replace it. And that's the thing, right here. But the goal is to replace their consumption of mainstream media entirely. This is a conspiracy theory. This is some Alex Jones shit right here. So again, this is how you know this is a pretty poor report. Because this is not a quantitative statement. This is not even a qualitative statement. This is an intention statement. They're assuming intentions, but they haven't provided anything. Now, granted, there are people who say, you should listen to us because we're the real source. InfoWars does that. Some other people do that. But they usually don't say, no, don't turn away from it. They will just state that, this media is terrible, and they call it out. They're calling it out for many reasons. One, because they want the truth to be known. But two, a lot of people used to trust these media sites. And when you have trust in something and your trust is betrayed, you're going to react in a way that is negative, whether you're angered or whether you're hoping that maybe those you used to trust will see the error of their ways and actually begin to become trustworthy again. And again, assuming intention like this is fucking retarded. And they say to do so, they can capitalize on broader distrust of news in American population. Indeed, among American audience, only 14% of Republicans have a great deal or fair amount of trust in mass media to report the news fully. Well, that's great. Who cares about Republicans? What's the total thing? Why do we care about just Republicans here? What about the Democrats? What about Libertarians? What about non-associated or independents? Why just Republicans? Why does that matter? And even then, is it because we're under a conservative president? That doesn't matter. Republicans we just got out of having a Democrat president. Why would Republicans still full trust in the news, especially after what happened with Trump and the whole fake news becoming a big Republican thing? This is a little bit of data that's irrelevant. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't support this statement. A study of youth in 2017, a study on youth views on the news found that teens express widespread skepticism about news and assume that much of the information they encounter may be inaccurate or biased. Yeah, and that's because news media does that. We have picked up on your scam. We've picked up on the con. Own it. If you were to own it and come out and say, yes, we are biased, we do have an agenda, this is what it is, we would start to trust you a bit more, actually. We'd say, okay, now we know. We know to take you with a grain of salt. I feel that way about Fox. Anytime I listen to Fox, I know to take it with quite a bit of salt, a good bag of salt. Because I know that, okay, this is from this perspective. Okay, you can almost kind of, interpret what they're saying and what the actual truth is based off of how they phrase things, how they say things. Similar to this, the way that they use certain terms, you get their idea of the direction they're coming from, what they're trying to do, and what they're really saying, what they actually are saying, and you understand better. Because when they say, they're trying to replace it, what they're just stating is that, well, they're better than us, and we don't know how to beat them, so they're trying to take over, instead of just saying, they're better. They're better. That's what that means. They're better. Based on this mistrust, disillusioned news consumers are turning to alternative sources. Yeah, and it's not just the right wing. TYT is very popular because of this. I think TYT's got a super big angle, but they're open about their angle. That's a big part of it. TYT will admit their bias. They'll say, yeah, we're coming from a left-wing angle. We think the left is correct, so we're going to do it this way. And people I'll still watch our stuff just to get the news from their angle, and that angle, and it's a pretty fair representation of a large portion of the left, so I can get a good idea of what a lot of people might be thinking, what a lot of people might be taking as fact or news. So there's value in that, and there's value in the fact that they are openly stating what they are, and what they're telling you and why. So then you can at least have some trust in, okay, I know that they're always going to present it this way. You're not going to have them presenting fact, and then all of a sudden change something to try and lead you to a certain thing. You know they're trying to lead you from the beginning. So there's trust there. In an extensive study on the online news sharing ecosystem in the lead up to the 2016 election, researchers found that the conservatives were opting out of media sources traditionally considered mainstream. Well, yeah, again, because of the way mainstream media was handling, one, the conservative side of the election, and two, just the way the mainstream's been handling conservatives for the past, 9 years. Again, why does it matter conservatives? Why aren't we hearing about the left wing? Why are we only hearing the conservative part? This is pointing to one side. It's narrowing it down to try and say, oh, well, conservatives are just crazy. No. And you're trying to depend on, this is just a small population of people, you don't have to listen to them. That's what they're trying to get to. They're leading us to a conclusion, and it's obvious. And this is why we don't trust. This is why this is not a legitimate report. And this speaks to a bigger picture I'm going to go over in a few moments. This is here, the following sections outline 2 key influencers in this. So let's go over these. Alternative credibility. That's a great fucking term. So many influencers in the discuss their channels as kinds of experiments. Relaying information in more meaningful and accurate ways than legacy media. Well, I guess. Specifically, this means they largely reject traditional modes of news media credibility, such as institutional reputation and the ideal of objectivity. Well, the sad thing is the only thing that news media relies on anymore is reputation, and the reputation's been tarnished because they are no longer objective. They don't stand up to. They don't hold themselves to objectivity. Instead, they are subjective. Instead, they make qualitative pieces on things that are not fact. They run stories, hit pieces without, and you want to go over that. Here's the thing: any just any mainstream do this, but if there's a rape accusation, and this goes for the all of the main ones, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, all of them. If there's a rape accusation, one of those sides, one of those media sites is going to run the skeptical, hey, let's wait till we get the facts out. The other side is going to run as, can you believe that they did this and that the political party's accepting it and they're just compliant with it, this poor woman. It's not always the same one. When it's George Takei, and George Takei says, no, I didn't do that, and presents skepticism, the left will be more skeptical of, oh, well, maybe not. Maybe they came forward with the wrong thing. Maybe they were confused. Maybe it was wrong. George wouldn't do that. Let's wait for the evidence. Fox is going to run, isn't it ironic that George Takei, of course he did that, he's a faggot, he's a homosexual, so he's going to be a pedophile. You're going to have that from the conservatives. Flip it. Now it's Donald Trump. Conservatives say, well, no, we need to be skeptical. We need to wait till we get all the facts. And the left is just going to ream him. Of course, it's the 12th one this year. Of course, he's a big rapist. It's patriarchy. It's always from a political spin. There's no objectivity. There hasn't been for like 2 or 3 decades, if not longer. Don't pretend you're objective. You're not. You have not been, like in my lifetime, you have not been objective. And your reputation has slipped slowly and slowly and slowly because people are catching on to the bullshit and seeing that you're not objective. We're not as stupid as you think. There are a lot of stupid people in the world. A lot of stupid people in this country. But a lot of people who consume media and actually think and use it to process ideas have caught on to the bullshit. Okay? So they're gonna look for new, actual, more accurate, and more meaningful. And what does it mean by meaningful? Not that the media tells you what to think, but the media gives you the most raw, basic data and facts, and allows you to make the decision, encourages you to think on it, gives you the links, gives you the sources, gives you everything that you need to make your own decision as an intelligent, critically thinking adult. That's the difference. Instead of spoon-feeding it to you like you're a retard and saying, oh, well, you have to think this, isn't it bad? And presenting things in a loaded way. Like this. Isn't it terrible that our president is accused of rape? You're already coming from a certain perspective. Instead of saying, what's your position on the fact that Donald Trump's been accused of rape so much? What do you think of that? What's your view? That allows for a more open-ended question. Instead of asking, isn't it terrible? That's where you're going to say, well, yes or no. This is a big thing, and this is something that a lot of people don't realize. This is why being economically minded and sales minded actually helps you in just finding bullshit like this. A great sales tactic is to in order to make a customer feel like they are being cared about is to ask them an open-ended question. But a great way to get a customer to buy something is to ask them a close-ended question, a yes or no question. So when you start off to seem like you want their interest, you ask them open-ended questions. Once you have enough information, then you use that to narrow down with close-ended questions to get them to buy something, preferably one of the things you want them to buy. It's a tactic. It's what's being employed here. They may present, well, we found this week that 32,000 people this year were killed by guns. Which leads to the question, why do we still have guns being allowed? And then it would ask, well, wouldn't you want to see safer streets? You see how it's presenting a fact, asking a general question, then asking a loaded question, a specific question, and that's not only is it a close-ended question, it's also a loaded question. Wouldn't you want safer streets? It's assuming that the streets aren't safe enough for you. Because if you say no, the implication of the question, the context, makes you sound like you're saying, no, I want the streets to be not as safe. I don't want something good. I want something bad. It's a way of questioning. And people can't see this. Obviously, these people don't see it. Either they are trying so desperately to hide their agenda, which if they're trying, I mean, obviously, snakes are going to be snakes. But I truly do believe that a lot of people involved in mainstream media, who trust mainstream media, who believe us one media outlet and don't believe any others, I truly believe that they are so convinced and are so just so hooked on the Kool-Aid of that outlet that they cannot rationally, apply critical thinking to anything that comes out from them. They just take it as gospel. They take it as fact no matter what. And it is just atrocious. And again, this is for everyone. But of course, these people are only going to focus on the right, or who they perceive to be the right, which is pretty much anyone right of the Young Turks. And even then, half of them would be considered right-wing too. Take a sip of this soda. Anyway, so, another thing they talk about relatability. Again, that is a big thing. Relatability is a big tool for YouTube because YouTube is independent. So you need to use relatability. You need to seem small. Seeming small, too, is actually a big thing, whether you're telling the truth or not. Because when you come off as relatable, and you seem like a small underdog, people are going to pay attention more, because it seems like you're doing this less for money, less as a 9-to-5 job, just doing what we want to do. Instead, you're doing it because you have a passion for it. So it seems like you actually legitimately care, take the time, take the effort to do it. That's a big selling point on that, and I can explain that. Of course, they're going to say, like, here, this draws on long-standing familiarity and reputation for their brand. Well, yeah, again, they draw on the fact that it's the status quo. YouTuber independent journalists, so Tim Pool, which sounds familiar, but there's is that the media outlet's institutional reputation can actually act as a cover for bad journalism, which it does. What ends up happening is that being behind a brand gets people off the hook for the things they do, which is true to a certain point. Not so much it gets people off the hook, but it masks the bullshit. It's like, is that bullshit? No, it's from this place. It can't be bad. Branding, and that happens in just branding in general. That's why, a mega corporation or a large business with a long-standing clientele can afford to fuck up a couple of times, and either get their act together or can afford to fuck up for a while, let themselves go downhill, and you could call their legacy clients or legacy patrons will just continue to take the progressively degrading bullshit until, the company goes under, which is what media is doing right now. And yeah, it's about a personal level of trust. Trust is big when it comes to it, as well as it's also, again, about coming off as caring. It comes off as a passion, and people like a passion. Yeah, Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin used to be on the Young Turks, but he's a lot more libertarian. And even then, I'd say he's kind of, I'd say he's more like me, liberal libertarian. I think he panders a lot to conservatives because I think he gets more money from them. But I mean, do what you do. This famous scripts a partnership with a well-funded, highly influential libertarian organization, which provides him with many of the speakers who appear on his show. A lot of his speakers are actually not libertarian. Ben Shapiro's not a libertarian. Jordan Peterson's not a libertarian. Candace Owens not a libertarian. Blair White's not a libertarian. Sargon of Akkad is, he's close, but he's in England, so he's not a libertarian. He identifies as a liberal and actually fits more with UKIP. He's not a libertarian. Most of those people aren't libertarians. They're conservatives, moderates, centrists, and liberals. They're not libertarians. And that's the other thing too. There's a lot of people that say, "Oh, libertarian." People don't know what the fuck libertarians are anymore. But anyway, this is a true thing. Yeah, I do believe that he established a partnership with Learn Liberty, which is it's an institute that is funded by the Koch brothers. Now, of course, T.Y. Chi tried to say that he's taking money directly from the Koch brothers, which isn't necessarily true. He's instead working with an organization that is funded by the Koch brothers, that is, donated to by the Koch brothers. So, while he's not taking money directly from the Koch brothers, it's indirect. But, yeah. And I mean, he can call himself a free thinker. I think he's more of just a free listener. I don't think he's a free thinker so much as a free listener, but I mean, I give him credit. And authenticity, which again, we go over that. So these are the things they're trying to do. Accountability. They do actually engage in accountability. If they get called out, that's the thing, is being a small-time YouTuber, you can do Q&As, you can do live streams like this. I'm gonna take a look. I don't know if I have any fucking thing. What is going on? Yeah, but like, you can have chats. You can have people making, messages and saying, "Oh, hey, I see this thing and I see that thing," but you don't get that anymore. You don't get that with mainstream media. Instead, it's if you write in a piece, they'll ignore it. They'll ignore you because they don't have to listen to you. They're a major media news source. You're just a little fucking person writing a thing. But instead, the accountability isn't just though with their own audiences who can leave comments and write letters and comment on everything that they kind of the community is interactive. It's also a community that keeps itself policed. If Sargon comes out with a bullshit video, Chris Reagan's going to call him out on it. And this has happened in quite a few different circles. You'll see people kind of keeping each other in check and calling out each other. And if you make a statement about someone and call someone racist or sexist, or you make a very poorly done video, or you use bad sources, or you steal someone's content, the rest of them are going to jump on you and hold you accountable for it. And if you don't admit to your fault, you're going to suffer for it. And that's the big thing. CNN doesn't have to worry about MSNBC holding them accountable, or Fox holding them accountable, because they're all separate. They're all funded by a lot of the same people, and no one cares. MSN, people who listen to MSNBC, MSN, they don't care about, CNN. CNN said that. I listen to this one. So there's no reason to hold accountable. There's no reason, because usually you're going to listen to one network or the other. And if your network is being accused by the other network, you're going to say, "Oh, who cares? It's the other network." There's no accountability, because it's so giant. It's kind of the way and again, it's corporatism. The funny thing is, this is essentially it's news corporatism. And it's news corporatism being upset that news capitalism is winning. That a market where there's a good product that is being enjoyed that is preferred, that actually has people, holding people accountable and everything else like that. The fact that that is winning these corporations, beating these corporations who have been given so many heads up, so many leads, so many advantages by just the bureaucracies put into place, politicians, everything. And those advantages are amounting to nothing. Those advantages are amounting to bullshit. Because places like YouTube are okay. And now, those bureaucracies and government are trying to influence YouTube to allow for those mainstream outlets to thrive again. Because so much money has been dumped into these places, and they have so much influence. They're influential and just on just a commercial basis. The fact that people don't tune in, and this is what it comes down. It comes down to money. The fact that people don't tune into them anymore, so they can't collect ad revenue, is huge, and that's the biggest thing. Well, the ad revenue on YouTube is nowhere near what you could get in television or radio. The loss in ad revenue from not having viewership in television and radio is fucking huge, and that's the real problem. They say, accountability, they're not accountable, and all these different things. What it really comes down to is corporatism. Their pocketbook's being hurt. They're no longer a good source of revenue, nor are they a good source of influence. So their secondary function is shit. And everyone's scrambling to take down the new kid on the block that's kicking ass. And this is a problem I see with a lot of things. This is the problem oil has. Now, this is the problem the tobacco industry has too. Oil, when it comes to alternative fuel sources, alternative energy sources like electricity, wind, solar, and just other things like that, fusion and nuclear. The problem is they're so stuck in their own mud that they can't renovate anymore. They've invested so much into one thing that they can't diversify, or they're too afraid to diversify and cost themselves, instead of being renovated and pushing for the new change, which would actually make them so much more money. You take the financial risk, sure, but if you end up becoming a pioneer and paving a new way, you'll end up being ahead of the game and making a shit ton more money. And if you're worried about your company's changing, you just change your company. No longer are we doing oil, now we're focused on solar. It's simple. It's going to be a bit rough for the first 5 or 10 years of that transition phase, but you're going to be making so much more money, leading the way, and solidifying yourself as the example for that business. This is what happened from radio to TV. Tobacco would do the same thing though. I always state that I'm surprised that Marlboro, or Camel, didn't have the, Marlboro or Camel 420 ready for when marijuana became legal for private consumption. I would have had that ready, so that way as soon as and I wouldn't even push to legalize it, because you know how much money you're going to make? People will buy the Marlboro 420 and they'll also buy a pack of cigarettes. Hell, you make it to where each Marlboro pack you buy comes with a doobie, or you have it to where every Marlboro pack, Marlboro 420 comes with, maybe four pot and then some cigarettes, and you can have it be where just you sell all sorts of alternate things, diversify, expand, create new products, innovate. Those are things that aren't done anymore because it's back to the whole corporatist view. Corporatism is about becoming a large, inflated business, cornering a market in a niche, and then never innovating. Instead, just sitting on what you have and controlling a market until that market is no longer viable. And every once in a while, when you do that, especially when you have a more free economy like we do, you're going to then have entrepreneurs, which is what pretty much most YouTubers, any YouTuber that most YouTubers are entrepreneurs, artists and such. If they offer a better product and start to steal your thunder, well, now you're going to try and pull the corporatist strings to win. You're going to use your influence, your social influence, political influence, your money, your resources to beat down the little guy. And I find it so fucking ironic that this is being pushed by the far left, the fucking socialists and the communists who are against corporatism and against capitalism. But they don't realize that this is corporatism. And this keeps not just the people they don't like down. This is going to affect the Young Turks. This is going to affect Steve Shives. This is going to affect Riley Dennis. This is going to affect Christy Winters and everyone else in that group. From that end, from that angle. Queer kid stuff. A little tiny YouTube channel with that's a passion project, and I give them credit. I disagree, and I find it kind of disturbing. But it's a passion project. It's something they're doing, and they're able to make some money and put forth something different. It's unique, creative, original content that you don't see on fucking MSNBC. You don't see it on Fox. Well, you will never see something like that on Fox. But you don't see that because it's creative, it's innovative, it's new, it's unique. But you don't get that anymore because everything's just mindless dribble. Hollywood's facing the same thing too. It's just repetitive, reboots and sequels of stuff that's already existing. And unless they do it in a new, innovative, creative, and very well done way, people just start hating it, and we start noticing the flaws because the amazement and the awe of it just being a part of that franchise or it being something new is gone, and now we're so desensitized to that we're looking at it with a microscope or a magnifying glass and able to see all the flaws that really take us out of the experience. It's the same with media. Media is doing the same thing with that, except for now we don't have the clout of being MSN or CNN or Fox or whatever, ABC. They don't have the cloud of being on this big media news source anymore. So we're like, oh, okay, yeah, well, that's bullshit. I can look that fact up online. The internet fucked them over. And then YouTube really fucked them over. And while there definitely is a lot of misinformation out there, we can find the legitimate information with just a few more clicks. It just takes being a little bit skeptical and a little bit smart. So this is why they've failed. And they just don't want to do that. And then of course they have their friends, their little butt buddies, these pseudo influential that follow the same pattern. While the Guardian isn't influential, it's in the same sphere. The Guardian follows the same. It's of the same cloth. So, it's not the mega corporation, but they're cut from the same cloth. It uses the same stories, it uses the same info, it uses the same tactics, it uses the same means of presenting its information. You don't see the Guardian making YouTube videos. You see BuzzFeed doing it. And BuzzFeed, ironically, would also be affected by the attacks by the Guardian and all that. Even though they even list in here, in this fucking thing, there's a whole thing about a BuzzFeed investigation. Which when I saw that, I fucking laughed my ass off. Right here. Yeah, YouTube profits from these live debates through the Super Chat feature, which allows users to pay to have their comments highlighted during the stream. Even if a chat fails to meet YouTube's advertising content. As a BuzzFeed investigation in May highlighted. A BuzzFeed investigation. Let's take a look at what that means here. More extreme content. White nationalist, commonly known as the Crying Nazi, made an appearance on a YouTube channel run by Annie Worski. Okay, so the fact that someone... And this is the thing, too. This is what's really funny. Chris Cantwell is a controversial figure, seen as a villain by a lot of people. Andy Worski is bringing him on to learn more about him, to get his idea, and to also possibly present a challenge. You know who used to do that? MSN, CNN, Fox. Those big media sources used to do that with people like Saddam Hussein or Gaddafi or any of those. You know, they would have done that with like Mussolini if they could have. If Mussolini was alive, like, bring on Mussolini. Why are you doing this? What are you doing? Oh, well, you know, I believe in this. Okay, well, why though? And questioning, asking hard-hitting questions of skepticism. You don't need to challenge them and say, well, you realize democracy is better, you're a patriot. No, but asking them questions that leads them to actually think and present their ideas. And allow people to, you know, Americans would be like, wow, that's fucking disgusting. And we'd be able to understand them better. Not just see them as this big caricature, but to really understand them and understand at the core why their positions are bad. That's what we are doing. That's what people like Worski and fucking and Sargon are actually doing. They're not bringing them on just to get money. I mean, granted, they're going to get the money from the fact that people are going to watch it, but they're going to lose subscribers. They're going to get a bit of hate because they put the spotlight on these people like Chris Cantwell and Richard Spencer, and put the spotlight on the flaws of their argument. Not so much in a way where they just attack them and screech like a bunch of fucking, you know, autistic children, but instead they actually put like, oh, okay, so why do you feel that? Okay, so what actually is happening? What is white genocide? Well, how is that genocide? Well, you do realize that, you know, America is a melting pot. Okay, what happens then if the left takes power and has those kind of you know, those ideas? What makes you different from them? So you realize it's identitarianism. Why are you engaging in identitarianism? Either way, you are using the tools of your enemy to defeat your enemy, and if your enemy wins, they're going to be using the same tools against you. So effectively, you're no better than them. They ask those kinds of questions, but because they ask them in a somewhat calm, a lot less angry and hostile, but more assertive, more authoritative way, that's subtle. That's how you're supposed to ask as a journalist, asking the questions and understand. Okay, I'm trying to understand what you're saying. Oh, okay, and taking those down, because that's what's being done. And it's not being done in an aggressive way. They're seeing it, and because money's being made. They're like, oh, well, they're just doing it to make money. Well, I mean, somewhat. They're definitely happy to take the money they get from it. But they're going to ask these questions. They have a passion about that. They enjoy making this content. And they're doing what the mainstream doesn't do anymore. When has CNN had Trump on in an interview? Let's look at this. Let's look at this up. Go to YouTube, right? Let's look up CNN interview with Trump. So, filter this year. Trump's attorney challenging Trump. That's on an interview with Trump. Someone talking in this response. LeBron James, why call? Okay. What did Trump do to help? Okay. Trump refuses to condemn Putin's ruthless. Okay, so interview with Piers Morgan about Trump. Okay. Talking bad about Trump. Where are they actually interviewing Trump? I don't want to get into whether Putin lied. Interview with CBS President Trump. Oh my gosh. Interview with CBS President Trump. Back on the White House and the president. Including explanations on why he revoked former CIA. So they have one. So it's more of just people talking about Trump. Okay. Now let's do this. Obama interview, Obama interview, Obama interview, Obama, Pearson on Obama. The Obama interview, Obama interview, Obama interview, Obama interview. Look at all of that. How much do they interview the Democratic person, but not the Republican? They'd ask Obama every time, oh, you know what, we need to have once a year, twice a year. Trump? No. Now, granted, Trump also has to agree to it, and if Trump doesn't agree to it, well, it's not their fault. But you have to understand that. And you don't get that. You don't get that sort of trust anymore. So, of course, in the end, the main issue is the fact that these media outlets are no longer valid resources. They don't report on facts anymore. They don't provide actual findings. They rely on their clout, their reputation only. You can't get into a debate and use CNN articles or MSN articles or anything like that as an objective truth. Washington, Post, Washington Journal, Huffington Post. You can't use them anymore because they all have a specific spin they want to put on everything. And they're only interested in self-maintenance and maintaining what they have. It's all self-interest with them. It's not, oh, okay, we need to present facts. We are passionate about the news. We want to make sure that the American public is informed and understanding. That they are not ignorant, but educated. And now more, it's about money and maintaining influence. It's about the reputation of being considered legitimate. Because if they really cared about the fact that they were considered illegitimate and distrustful, they would ask people why. And then they would change their ways to become more trustworthy. That's the difference. Someone who actually cares, a company that actually cares about being considered trustworthy, will talk to their audience, talk to their consumers, talk to their customers, and get an idea of what they could do to remedy that problem, and on what they could do to be trustworthy again. But instead, they're going to attack their competition, attack their opposition, not make any changes themselves, but expect all the changes to be made by the government and by the people. To deplatform their competition and regain control of the market. It's all corporatism. It's all bullshit. And if you can't see that, you're not educated, you're not critically thinking, you're not intelligent. You're a mindless fucking zombie and a corporate whore. If you're going to come out here and say that, alternative media sources are terrible, which they aren't. Most of them are okay. Some of them are great. Some of them are stupid. But you need to use critical thinking and reasoning to understand which ones are which. And most intelligent people who have any sort of grasp of critical thinking, grasp of logic and reason, would be able to sift through pretty effectively. But because people are so tied to the tradition of following those media sources they grew up with or that they learned to trust when they were younger, or because they're so hell-bent on maintaining a political narrative and only siding with people they agree with, they're going to sacrifice that, those critical, essentially the critical agency, their ability to critically process and determine if something is valid or legitimate or questionable or false sound or whatnot, because they're sacrificing that for the quote-unquote greater good of promoting a narrative, of promoting a political idea, a political ideal, sacrificing X for the community, which is the political community, whatever, the collective. They end up maintaining being part of the problem and hurting themselves. Because again, this is going to affect the Young Turks. This is going to affect Riley Dennis. This is going to affect Steve Shives. This is going to affect so many people who would be considered left-wing alternative media, because the attack is going to be so broad, because they need to catch a wide variety of people and can't just make a blacklist. Because if you do that and you don't make it a catch-all, you won't be able to stop people from changing, like Dave Rubin. You won't be able to catch the upcomers who will fill that void real quick once you blacklist. It's going to affect everyone. Kind of like what they did too. They tried pulling out a thing where anything based on politics or tragedy would be hit hard, and the Young Turks got hit hard because they were trying to corner the right wing and the centrists, but they ended up really hitting a lot of the left wingers too. They're going to kill themselves with their own weapon, and they're going to end up having the status quo. And it's the funniest thing that a lot of these people say that, oh, they're anti-status quo, but they support the status quo. They support the mega corporate media, and they can't see that it's corporate. They can see the Koch brothers, even though they donate to a lot of that media anyway. They can see that. They can't see the fact that Soros is a big person behind media, and he's no different. They can't see that it's no different than mega oil companies or Walmart or anything like that. They can't see that it's no different. They can't see the bullshit from their own farm. They can't smell it. They can smell it from the farm across town. And it's a common problem, just altogether. You get that on the conservative side too, and everyone. But it's so ironic, and it's why I don't take a lot of those people seriously whenever I get into debates with them on social media. It turns into me making fun of them because they're stupid. They're hypocritical. They don't have principles. They're instead they adhere to a arbitrary political idea, not an actual principle of thought, not an ideal, but instead, criteria X, Y, and Z. These rules, these arbitrary rules, and these arbitrary desires. And what are they based on? Well, they're just based on what, this. Well, we say we want this to be changed, so X needs to happen. Okay. Well, what's the principle? What's the reasoning? What's the, how can we apply that in an abstract way to another situation so we can use that to solve more than one problem? Well, you can't because it's specific to that. Okay. And that's how they are with this. Instead of saying, oh, well, the media is just, they're not a reliable source. Not just that they aren't trusted, but they're not. They don't post, they don't present facts and evidence and allow us to make the decision. They instead present some facts and some evidence edited and, only show certain things and hide others, and presented in a way, in a package that is designed to lead the consumer, the reader, the viewer, to come to a specific conclusion. And they can't see that. And they can't see the value in a long time, traditional or journalistic tradition of interviewing the controversial figure and asking them some pretty tough questions, not designed to challenge them and tell them they're wrong, but instead to challenge them to think and to present their ideas to people who would not agree with them, and to possibly show them for how flawed and stupid they are, but also show their thinking behind it, so you can maybe understand your enemy better. That was the value of journalism back in the day. Now journalism is just propaganda and commercial, and they're losing their money and they're losing their influence, and they're freaking out and scrambling to change that. And pretty much, if you support this whole attack on the on alternative influence and the things that they did to like Alex Jones and that, then you're a part of the problem. You're anti-free speech. You are in favor of the status quo. You are not a revolutionist. You're not a communist or a socialist. You're a corporatist, and you honestly deserve the big, fat, corporatist, totalitarian dick you're getting up your ass. And enjoy it, because you've earned it, you fucking moron. So, I've been your logical libertarian. Hash it out in the comments. Let me know what you think. Bye.